Hey, it's Monday and I'm still alive. I guess that means navel-gazing. Cheers, everybody! Welcome back, everybody, to me doing the weekly navel-gazing, where I talk about all the stuff I did last week, or didn't do, and all the books I read last week, and, start about talking what I'll plan to do this week, and then it all kind of descends into madness, as always. And, let's start with what I read last week. And I did read books. I did, in fact, read and finish the Book of Mormon. I have thoughts on that, but for now, we'll see what that goes. And then I read American Zion, A History of Mormonism, which came out last week, and it's by Benjamin E. Park, and it's a good book. And if you're not as stupid as me and pre-ordered the thing, you can now get it for free on Audible. So enjoy yourself some proper Mormon history, if you feel like it. Anyway, I read that, and then I decided that I'm done with Mormonism for a bit, and reread Use of Weapons by Ian M. Banks, which, it's a pretty decent book. I'm understating the matter. It's a great book. I reread it for our ongoing the culture read-along thing. We'll have conversation about it relatively soon, I hope. So I don't know, if you feel like joining us, now's your time. Go read Use of Weapons and then join us on the server for a conversation about Use of Weapons and why it's not an IKEA advertisement. Alright, and then I did reread Snuff by Terry Pratchett for our ongoing and almost done Discworld read-along, and then we postponed the conversation, so it's going to happen this upcoming Sunday, the 11th, and if you feel like joining, well, now you got like a couple of days head start. Go read Snuff. It's a good book. I reread it and I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would, because for some reason my memories were not that good of the book, but I feel partly that's, the general... at the time, we already knew that Pratchett was suffering from Alzheimer's, so there's that sort of feeling that, made reading these books when they came out at the time maybe made it more difficult than it is now. I don't know. Anyway, go read Snuff. It's a good book. I did read it and I enjoyed it. And then I did start The Doctrine and Covenant, which is more Mormon stuff. It's in fact the revelations of one Joseph Smith Jr. and a bunch of later revelations by later presidents of the Latter-day Saints Church. That's what I read. Well, I'm not done with the Doctrine and Covenant yet. I'm, I guess, halfway through that, maybe a bit more. And I'll finish it relatively soon. Then, which brings us to what I'll plan to read, I'll move forward to what is called The Pearl of Great Price, which is another Mormon doctrine kind of book. It contains the translations of the Book of Abraham, and boy, is that fun, and some other parts or other texts that Joseph Smith wrote and claimed to be translations from either lost texts of the Old Testament or just general Old Testament stuff, and contains some other bits and pieces. So it's more Mormon stuff, and it's considered part of the corpus of accepted Mormon gospel, so to speak, together with the Book of Mormon, and of course the actual Bible, King James Version, and of course the Doctrine and Covenant. So I'm doing research, is what I'm saying. And then once I'm done with all of that, I'll move on to Wrestling the Angel by Terrell L. Gibbons, which is a bit of an exploration of Mormon cosmology and Mormon thought in general, Gibbons being a LDS member and, well, researcher and so forth. So that's the next part. Yes, I'm still doing a lot of Mormon things. And then there's obviously Mormonism and white supremacy and some other Mormon stuff that will crop up. And whenever I'll just, get all Mormoned out, I'll drop in some sci-fi or fantasy books whenever they, interest me, or whatever fiction comes up that I feel like reading. I'm sort of a bit lost there right now. I just don't know what to read. I know I should be reading The Spear Cuts Through Water. I know I should be reading Two Like the Lightning. But I don't know. I can't feel it. I don't know. So, I don't know. Leave suggestions down below. I may have one Audible credit to burn right now. And, what about videos I made? I did not make the videos I promised. See, I said I would do the video on In Ascension, and I said I'd do a video on him by Jeff Ryman, and then I didn't. I still have a fully rendered and recorded version of the In Ascension video, but I think I can do better. So I'll try to do that this week. I still have to do a video on him by Ryman. I think I'm getting close to where I can do that. And then hopefully that will also happen this week. What did happen instead was, of course, me doing a video on what is called AI audiobooks. It's mostly about synthetic voice synthesizers and so forth, and it's a topic that I feel strongly about, and so I made a video about it. It took me the entire fucking week. I have, in fact, recorded and rendered 4 versions of this thing. There's 4, and you only get to see one, the 4th. Well, there's 2 people in my audience that got to see 2 versions and helped me decide. And, yeah, that's that. I think it's a good video as videos go. As I said, I took 4 times. I probably could have done an even better job. I probably could have explained some bits more, some bits better, you know, the usual misgivings, but it's as good as I could do without, you know, turning this into a spiral that never ends. And I got to mention, you know, proper Marxist economics, which is good. I do like to do those kind of things. So that's the videos I made last week. And the videos I plan to make this week is, of course, as I said, Ryman's Him and, well, In Ascension by Martin McInnes. The snuff video will have to wait until after we have our conversation. So there's that. Will other videos happen? Who knows? Will I happen? Who knows? If something comes up, I'll talk about it, I guess. But plans are not what I do, what I make, usually, I guess. Or when I make them, I ignore them. Which is, of course, as it should be. So, one thing that I found interesting, or I kind of never thought about before, is the actual costs of making of doing videos and making a channel and so forth. And I think it's interesting because we're doing BookTube, right? So a lot of this is about books, and we buy those books. Now, obviously, you know, when you say, well, how much does it cost to run a BookTube channel? It's like, yeah, well, you need something to record on. You can run your entire channel just off your phone if you feel like it. And so does the phone already, is that already something you have to pay to start a BookTube? Well, technically, yes, but you also use your phone in general, so maybe partly. But what about the books we buy and we read? Now, this is sort of where it gets interesting for me, because technically, if I buy a book, I read the book, I enjoy the book, and then I make a review about it, then yes, the price of that book is technically part of the cost of making that specific video. Unless, of course, I do illegal things and, you know, steal it or got given an ARC or whatever. But if I go and read a book and pay for that book, then that's cost of the video, isn't it? Which brings me to, of course, videos that cost a lot of money, which is, you know, technically book haul videos, where you spend a shit ton of money to make a video, to hold up your books in front of the camera and show them off and so forth, and you have to pay for those books. And if you don't read those books immediately, and there's obviously, you know, people who have large physical TBRs, then the entire price of all those books, that whole money was basically what you had to pay to record that specific video. The cost of that video is insane. And if you look at BookTube, we don't make money, like, not a lot of money. Right now, apparently, I'm like roughly making €6 per month on YouTube. You don't get many books for that, right? So the interesting thing here is buying these books, is that an investment for later, you know, consumption and enjoyment and entertainment, because you plan to actually read all the books you book haul? Or is it, in fact, an investment in hoping that showing off all your BookTube channel, your books and stuff, will blow up your channel to a point where you make a lot of money with those books, and suddenly with those videos, and suddenly you have sponsors and everything, and suddenly it's, you know, because obviously book hauls are successful videos, and they make a lot of, you know, they get a lot of views compared to, say, discussing one specific book, which no one watches, right? So, no one, but fewer people watch. So there is that calculus behind it, and it's an interesting aspect that I have not calculated fully, because I don't make book hauls, right? Except for that one time, right? It's interesting to me to think about that, because I feel we don't Because, we on BookTube usually, unless we're like, the big channels up there, but out here in the wilds, we're like, well, this is my hobby. I just love to talk about books. Right? Are we, though, if we're just holding up books? Or is there something more sinister going on here? Because there might be. I'm just thinking aloud here. It's just something that crossed my mind, because I don't do book hauls, but what's the cost of my videos? And though I plan to make a video on, the larger Mormon sphere and beliefs and so forth as a lead in towards the Brandon Sanderson stuff, because, what with so many genre fiction authors being associated with either the LDS Church or some of its splinter groups, I think having a rough understanding of what Mormons actually believe beyond just watching that musical that everyone's talking about, I think might help. But so far, I've read or listened to audiobooks, which I purchased. I did not go on Libgen and steal them. I did, in fact, buy them. And that's like the Book of Mormon. That is the very short introduction to Mormonism. That is the Mormonism, What Everyone Needs to Know. That is American Zion, which I unfortunately pre-ordered and so paid an actual credit for. That is the Doctrines and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Price, which are in one book. That's 5 already, plus the Wrestling the Angel, which I'm going to, plus the Mormonism and White Supremacy. That's already 7 books, unless I add something more. That's 7 Audible credits. That's almost $70 for a video. And it's just something that I realized, like, well, we don't think about that. Like, I have a Patreon, and thank you very much for being patrons, those of you who are. That's almost the entirety of my monthly Patreon just to pay for books for one specific video, which is an incredibly bad way of spending money, I guess, when you assume this is the investment. If you don't assume this is investment, and I obviously don't, because I'd be a really bad investor in that case, it's still impressive for me to realize that, yes, me reading all of these books to create one video, there's a cost behind that that may not fully come through afterwards, because while I'll definitely do a bibliography down in the description, everything, we're like, well, he read those books. He could have gotten most of them from libraries, possibly, some of them. But since a lot of these are, English texts and so forth, it really depends on my local German library, which is strong in science fiction and fantasy, but not necessarily strong on English language stuff. So it's just something I realized last week. Like, holy shit, I've spent like $70 on a video that hasn't even been made yet. So yeah, I don't know where to go with this. I just wanted to ramble out loud about the fact that we do in fact spend a lot of money on stuff without thinking about this was actually money spent to make a video, because a lot of times, right, there's books we want to read, but then there's books we feel like we need to read, or there's books, well, I guess if you run your Patreon in a way where your patrons can decide which book to read, they kind of paid for the book that you're reading, so it works out that way. But if you just feel that you need to talk about Fourth Wing, because everyone's talking about Fourth Wing, for example, and you buy Fourth Wing and you read it, and you make your rant review, you didn't enjoy reading Fourth Wing in that situation. You just invested money and time to create a video in the hopes of doing something. And the question is, like, what is that something? Is that something, acknowledgement? Is that applause on the internet? Are you doing it for the views? Are you doing it for potential sponsors and money that maybe some YouTubers will eventually get? What's the motivation in that specific situation of reading a book that you kind of know you won't like and then go and talk about, which is, one of the reasons why I don't read books necessarily that I know I'm not going to like, unless I think there's a larger lesson to be learned. Like with the Drizzt books, well, I had already bought them like years ago in this like weird spur of nostalgia. The same with the Wheel of Time books, and where with Wheel of Time, I'm like, yeah, well, I talk about fantasy books a lot. I should have read Wheel of Time at some point so I know what it is about, because I believe in having background knowledge, which is why I'm reading the Sanderson stuff now. It's like you can't talk about fantasy literature right now and not mention Sanderson at this point, and to know to mention him and to talk about him, it feels like, yeah, I should probably read more than just those Mistborn books I read a decade ago. Maybe it makes sense to read more of those. You know what I mean? So there are ways of doing that, but if I do that, even me reading these Sanderson books, they're to build up sort of my knowledge, so I feel comfortable talking about other fantasy books afterwards. Which once again brings like, look, what am I investing in if I spend Audible credits on Brandon Sanderson? You know what I mean? I really don't know where to go with this. I just think that maybe sometimes, as booktubers, we need to come to these moments like, well, how much are we actually putting into this? Time, obviously. Well, the reading time, I guess, can be chalked up as entertainment and fun, and recording is, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it takes, plus editing if you do some, plus also money for buying the books that we use. I think there goes more into it than we often realize. And I think that's one of the tricks of social media, why social media in general is so successful, I guess, at turning us into the terrible content creators that we all are, is that it doesn't feel like we're putting in a lot unless we sit back and are like, well, actually, this week I spent this much time. The same with that AI art video, which on AI audiobooks here, right? Which on the surface, I didn't read a book for that. I read a bunch of news articles and that's that. Maybe chalk that up to like a half an hour or something. And then I recorded the whole thing 4 times. That's 2 hours of recording for a 30-minute video. That's still time spent that I could have, spent reading the Book of Mormon, which would then lead to the next video. You see where I'm going with this, right? The fact that we do this as a hobby because we enjoy it, so to speak, still means we need to figure out, what do we actually enjoy? Do we enjoy putting ourselves out there on the internet? Are we asking for applause? Are we asking for comments, for recognition, for the wide world to acknowledge that we exist? What's going on here? Because I could just as well talk with friends on Discord about a book, but I'm not. I'm making a video, so potentially other people will watch these videos. And though I absolutely love that you're watching and commenting and so forth, you are not my friends at that point, right? Some of you may be my friends, but that's because we know each other from other circumstances, right? And so there's something I'm doing for some weird reason, and I don't know what it is. But I think it's helpful sometimes to think about why we're doing these things. Is it that we're so full of ourselves that you just really feel that the world needs to know what we think about a book? Or is it something else? I don't know. As I said, just rambling. I'd be interested in your takes. Why are you watching BookTube? If you're a booktuber yourself, why are you doing BookTube? How much money do you think you spent on creating an individual video? Have you ever thought about that kind of stuff? I'd be interested. Let me know. Beyond that, as I said, hopefully videos on him and in Ascension this week, hopefully other stuff. I hope you had a great week. Let me know what you did last week. Let me know what you're reading right now. Tell me what I should really do if you believe in me doing anything. And I don't know. Just have a good week, I guess, and I'll talk to you very soon about something. And until then, thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, joining the Patreon, all of that stuff. Anyway, see you around. Cheers.